Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Volunteering. I'm your host, Stormy Bell. Today, I'm very pleased to introduce our guest, Angelique Hinton. And I really appreciate her mission because it's so timely for what's going on. Because when we air this episode, it will be 7 days out from the US elections. And the work she's doing is impactful for getting the vote out. So welcome, Angelique. And I think I can call you Miss Angie.
You can just call me Angie, but all the young people call me Miss Angie. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Angie is a political and community organizer and advocate for new generation of voters. She co-founded PA Youth Vote to educate children, young people ages 18 to 24 on the vital issues affecting their everyday lives to ensure they show up to the polls and choose their elected leader wisely. So let's just dive in. Can you share the history, the mission of PA Vote? Like what sparked your passion for this?
So PA Youth Vote was founded because in 2020, I was doing some work where I was going into Philadelphia School District to partner for the 2020 election and just register students. Of course, we remember everything that happened in 2020 with COVID. So I had a small opportunity to engage with teachers before school shut down. And all of the teachers that I did meet with in Philadelphia said the same thing to me, which is, we don't need someone to register our students. We can do that ourselves. We need someone that is going to help them understand why they should be voting and why this process is something they should be participating in. And so 2021, we founded PA Youth Vote to provide that why. And so we are a collaborative organization. We work with teachers, students, other community organizations, big and small, also institutions like the school district, to really just go ensure that young people year round understand the importance of voting in every single election and how to hold leaders accountable once in office to be responsive to the concerns of young people.
That's awesome. But isn't that some things that are supposed to be taught in civics class?
So it is supposed to be taught in civics class. That's a great question. However, in Pennsylvania, and I imagine across this country, there has been a lot of disinvestment in education. So in Pennsylvania specifically, Pennsylvania legislature was sued last year for the way they fund public education, that it has created a great deal of inequity and inadequacy when it comes to resources predominantly in Black and brown school districts. And so, in addition to not having proper resources, not being able to have enough teachers, translators, resources, one of the things that they're also not having access to or don't have the capacity to provide is civics. And so, while there is a test young people are supposed to take to kind of make sure that they, have some understanding, there's really a disparity in the level of understanding that's able to be provided to ensure that people that are coming from the most underserved communities who probably need this the most are getting access to, civics education in a way that really connects the dots for them between the issues that they care about and how voting and holding leaders accountable can help impact policy to address those concerns. So it's there, it's supposed to be there, but I think what most
I
people don't
love civics.
understand is, generally speaking, right, civics is not being taught the way it used to be, right? It's not being, have such a strong emphasis, as it used to, and then there's great inequity in who has access to a real understanding of how our democracy works.
I remember taking civics in school and just I enjoyed it and just enjoyed all the intricacies of that. So do you go into the classrooms? Like what does your model look like?
Yeah, so I will say too, the way we engage is very intentional. And so again, we are really trying to provide equity. And so we are intentionally going into the most underserved, underfunded school districts. And so it's certainly a hard topic to bring up because one, they don't have the education, and because their communities often are not educated about how this works, they're not participating. And so when they're not participating, right, then they don't see a lot of responsiveness. So, you know, they haven't seen government work for them. And so this is not a process that they're excited to learn about or really want to participate in. And so what we do is we create curriculum and educational presentations, and we go into the schools and we really provide it in a way that makes it relevant for these young people to help them understand that, you know, what they may just see, you know, as some, you know, problem, right? Really oftentimes can be addressed or connected directly to policy. So many people don't even realize, you know, minimum wage is a policy in Pennsylvania that our state legislatures they could address at any time, right? If they wanted to. School funding is a policy decision, and that it's something that impacts them every single day. You know, a lot of young people care about things like racial justice. Well, depending on who your attorney general is, right? In instances like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Mike Brown, right? Whether or not we pursued police accountability looked very different, you know, at the hands of this elected official, right? Determining whether or not they wanted to pursue accountability. So when you really go in, and we like to lead with listening first to understand what issues they care about, and then we connect it to the offices up and down the ballot who should be addressing those concerns. Because in addition to this job, I'm also the president of an NAACP. And it's in one of those communities where now we have these students who are uneducated about this process are adults. And they also don't know that a DA is elected. They also don't know which body of government should be responsible for their recreational programming, et cetera. And so it's really about providing engagement in a way that is relevant to the people you're engaging, right? And then you can find that it can, you know, resonate with them and they're more interested. And then they do become excited about learning how this is a process through which they can be empowered to really, you know, force elected leaders to be more responsive to and reflective of their communities.
So you've been formally doing this what since 2001?
Since 2021.
In that short time, what impact have you seen on the community?
We've seen a lot of impact. And so we've seen young people that we started working with in 2020. They are still very much engaged in our organization and trying to figure out now how they can expand upon this and introduce it into the colleges that they're in, right? They are still finding ways to contribute to the programming that we're creating now for younger students who are currently in high school. You know, our whole program director, right, is a person who had the privilege of having a great civics teacher. They went to a school in Philadelphia, which was a magnet school. So they have a lot more resources. And so they had the privilege of having our co-founder as their, you know, social studies and civics teacher. That prompted and instilled in her the understanding of the importance of this. So she went on and studied it in college, did some work with us in 2020, and has now come back and is leading our programming. So she is creating the programming that we are now doing with seniors that are in high school. And so what we have seen is the way that we're engaging has really created a sense of empowerment. And once you instill that within young people and really show how this really applies so much to everything that they're very much concerned about, they continue to want to stay engaged. And so, and engaged in a way where they're actually becoming civic actors and not just registered, right? They're participating, they are voting, they are learning at deeper and deeper every year how to hold leaders accountable. And we saw that the turnout in Philadelphia, which is where we have been able to do the most work. Um, work primarily, again, this is a collaborative, you know, thing that we're doing, but the group collectively is working primarily to engage 18-year-olds. And so 18-year-olds in Philadelphia in the primary was significantly higher, double any other Gen Z age in Philadelphia. So again, we have seen that this is very impactful and it works. It's just about how you're engaging, right? And you know, again, that you're really making sure that it's connected to issues that people care about.
So you're actually teaching the students, like, this is the issue and this is how it affects your life. So they have that direct.
Well, they know how it's affecting their lives. They have the lived experience of how these issues have impacted them every day, but really understanding if you have no recreational programming in in your community, right? You need to go to council and we need to go to council meetings and we need to help put on public record that we are concerned that we don't have recreational programming in our community, right? School funding. If you don't have appropriate school funding and we have now a legislature that was ordered by a court to fix this unconstitutional funding we have in Pennsylvania, we can go to our state legislature. We can write emails. We can go and visit and do, a visit in Harrisburg and maybe, do some sort of a rally to really bring attention to it. There's all different ways, really, to hold our leaders accountable to doing the things that we know will make our lives better, right? That will create more equity and equality. But it's really about helping them understand who does what, and then giving them tools and supporting them as they start to really use their voices to advocate for the changes they want to see and hold leaders accountable to, again, being responsive to the needs of all constituents.
That's awesome. So this is the Art of Volunteering podcast. So how do volunteers fit into your mission and vision?
So we don't have volunteers in the normal sense because we are working with youth, right? Most of our primary target is 18 or 17, about to turn 18, but we're in schools. And so you have to have all kinds of clearances to do the work that we're doing directly engaging with young people. However, volunteers can definitely help by calling up their elected leaders and saying, hey, why don't we have access to, education in all schools around civics? If people want to strengthen democracy, I always do this work in a number of ways. So I work in my community trying to help them understand how this process is a source of empowerment to force people to be responsive to the things we want to see, the policies we need to see to create more equity and equality. But then I also do racial equity work where I help other people understand that in communities where you are voting and you are, understood that you will hold people accountable, they can do things like call up their elected leaders, right? And ask them why isn't there education equity and civics available to all students? Or, they can, always donate, right? That's always helpful. But really trying to help us expand our capacity in helping us connect with teachers that are in schools, helping us connect and sometimes lending their support if we're trying to get a policy in a school district to make sure that, students have policy that says they have to get voter education in a school. So there's different ways you can volunteer and support the work that we're doing, but it wouldn't be in the normal sense because, everyone has to have clearances that are working with, students in the school district.
That's right. Okay. So we talked a little bit about this, but can you share of impact, direct impact, a student or a group of people that you're working with and the direct impact your work is having on their lives?
So I have one of the most perfect stories. A student named Zion, and he was a young man that came to us in 2020, one of our first students. And when he came to us, he was going through a very challenging point in his life, which definitely impacted him. He was also extremely introverted and shy. And so we were doing Zoom classes, having Zoom meetings, and he would not even turn on his camera initially when he started working with us. And then little by little, he kept coming back and, he started joining the conversation. And so then it finally, the world opened up a little bit and we were able to go out and do voter registration in the community. And so Zion came out and started doing voter registration where he was talking to people out in front of libraries and in front of grocery stores about the importance of voting, things he had learned while, on the calls with us with his camera off. And so he started to really build in confidence and using his voice. and grew to be really fond of that. Fast forward, his second year home from college, I said, Zion, you are going to do the press conferences for the organization this year. And so he was extremely nervous. And I said, look, we would never leave you on your own, right? We're going to help you. So we would identify the press conference. What is the context of the conversation? You have about 3 minutes to prepare this. He would write up something, we'd wordsmith it with him. And so for that whole summer, he did press conferences, including the end of that summer, we did a collaboration with the Mayor's Office of Youth and Engagement in Philadelphia, and we ran the Civic Day for their Youth Week. And so we had to do a press conference, or Zion did, with the mayor of Philadelphia at the time. And
Wow.
when I tell you, I didn't have to help him wordsmith it. I didn't have to build his confidence. He walked up there to the front of that room with all those reporters standing next to the mayor, and he did such an incredible job and walked off of that platform like a boss. And so I was almost in tears because I just to see the evolution of the work he was doing. He has since been doing internships in state senator's office, even international. So this summer, he spent in Tokyo doing an internship, and he is this year, I am so proud to say, he is the president of the student body at Penn State main campus. And he will tell you if you talk to him,
No.
it was through the work that, was transformative for him and helping him find confidence in walking into rooms where he may have ordinarily been uncomfortable, and really advocating for things he wants to see and really running for office at this point. And so that is an incredibly proud moment for me. We also have students like Sarah Julia, who we worked with and was very passionate about school funding. She's done interviews with us about it. She has also been at, rallies, statewide rallies. She is now in her first year at Hampton, Virginia. And so she registered when she turned 18. But for some reason, because we teach all our students to check, she checked and saw that it didn't take. And so she called me from Virginia 3 times to say, Miss Angie, I registered again, it still didn't work. And so ultimately we worked the commissioner's office, and we got, her registration to take. She is taking the train home to vote this year in this election because she understands how important it is, right? And so then I'll say, like Cameron again, who is running our, she is one of the students that had the fortune of having a good civics teacher. Many of our students don't. So that then propelled her and instilled in her a desire to then go on and study it in college. And then she has now come back because it means so much to her. She is leading our programming for our organization at 24 years old. And so there are many students that have been impacted by this work, that stay connected to this work because they understand what we're doing is not transactional, right? It is truly trying to empower them as citizens and as whole people. And so the impact has been, I mean, it has been the greatest joy and privilege of my life to work with these young people and see how they have grown, and how they've become confident in their voices and are now stepping out as young adults and really using that empowerment in ways, to really kind of create changes that they want to see in various ways.
So it's a healthy combination between education and empowerment.
Yes, we definitely are empowering the whole person. All of our ambassadors that come in, we're creating a space where, depending on what they say they are interested in, we try to help develop those skills and give them opportunities to do things through PAU Vote, for which they get paid. We get grant funding to help pay them, because they're all in low income communities. But they're learning things like how to create social media content, how to create digital media content, how to do public speaking, right? Working in elected leaders' offices. There's so many things that they're doing, and ways that they are being empowered and again, it has just been truly remarkable to watch them grow, and to see the dedication that they in turn give back to then passing the baton on and helping others have that same type of engagement and empowerment.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, let's pivot just a bit. Do you have a volunteer journey?
So I came into this work as a person who grew up in a very low income community, the one for which I now represent as the president of the NAACP. And so I didn't really follow politics at all, right? Or volunteer. I worked, I had children, I worked at a financial firm for 20 years. And then after doing that, it was in an ultra high net worth client facing group, which is ironic considering how I grew up. But after doing that for 20 years, I was like, I need to do something more purposeful. And so I did go off and do some political organizing. And so, as a political organizer, I help most of the elected officials that are currently in my area get elected. And then I actually worked in a state rep's office. It was just for me seeing how we had come into or ran for that office with certain goals. And then once we got in office, what we did was figured out who had voted, and then we were going to spend all of our time really trying to shore up those votes and not, many of the things that I thought we were going to put at the top of the agenda. And so from there, I ended up doing the work that I'm doing with, that led me to PA Youth Vote. But I'm also, as a president of an NAACP, is purely volunteer. And so everything I do in that role is about taking all this information I've learned and working in these political spaces and now, in this organization that is on the outside trying to teach young people how the political process works. Um, Everything I do for the NAACP is more in the line of holding leaders accountable, right? So as the president, I spend many hours holding commissioners accountable, holding council accountable, to doing things that will create more equity in my very inequitable county. And so many people don't realize that being the president in the NAACP is a volunteer role, but it very much is. And so I spent many hours really committed to really trying to help this community understand the importance of being civically engaged, but also on the other side, holding leaders accountable to still addressing those needs, whether they vote or not, really trying to advance policies that will create more equity and equality. And so most of my volunteer work has been around creating a more equitable society and community. But I have given very many hours to it because I see, again, that there is a need for the work that I do and for my voice, and to really try to help empower my community just as much as I'm trying to help empower that next generation.
That's awesome. Good work. Okay, so now I consider it to be a fun question. Some people agree, some don't. Can you share a blooper?
What is
It doesn't mean something went wrong. It just didn't go as planned. And what did you learn from it?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So our model initially, again, going back to how we started, right? Our initial model was going in and we knew we had to do some education, but it was very much more focused on voter registration. And so, and really trying to just create resources for teachers in the schools so they can then take that and do the work in the schools themselves, right? And what we have learned is that these policies that have created such great inequity and inequality and inadequacy in these schools has really made it almost impossible for these teachers to take this on themselves. They just do not have the capacity because they are really basically triaging the trauma that is coming in from communities that continue to be underserved, right? And under resourced. And so while we went in thinking we were going to create, tools and resources for teachers. What we have learned is we have to have more than one model. And so we pivoted. We had to pivot to say, okay, we will have a model because there are some teachers in magnet schools and, otherwise that can take this on, that are actual social studies teachers. I think people don't realize in these underfunded schools, oftentimes we have people teaching, subjects that aren't even educated in those subjects. That's not what they were educated in, right? So they're not capable of teaching civics. So we do that work and we provide those resources and curriculum for those teachers. But we also now go into schools directly. That is a result of understanding we needed to change the model where we're going in now more deeply engaging. We are going to create after school programming. We are going to create summer programming where we can then just provide this engagement and not put another additional thing on the teachers. We also at the same time are now realizing the importance of working with other youth organizations that are doing youth programming, because many of them are helping empower students in other ways. So it may be college readiness, it may be, young people who have suffered from gun violence, whatever it is, they're doing empowerment, engagement programming, but they aren't really connecting the dots for these young people between those issues, right? And just the need for policy to address, all of these concerns that they have. And so we will go in and partner with those organizations and then provide the civics piece to help them be able to connect the dots for these young people. And so while they're getting empowered in other ways, they're also getting the civics empowerment and understanding that a part of being, an adult citizen in this country is really voting and really then following up to hold these leaders accountable to doing what they said they would do and what they should be doing.
Awesome. Okay, Miss Angie, we are at the conversation. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I know my listeners have. So I'm going to give you the mic. I want you to love on PA Youth Vote, whether there's something you want to share that we didn't cover, whether there's a way you want to encourage people to advocate for the youth to vote, whatever you want to share, the mic is yours.
So I'll start off by saying leading PA Youth Vote has been, and this is, people say things, but this has literally been the privilege and the honor of my lifetime. I go into this work as a Black mom, and they all become my kids, and I care and love on them in addition to empowering them. What I will say is, I think if we care about democracy and we want to see democracy strengthen, we all need to be invested in making sure that everyone is getting access to voter education and, making it easier for people to vote. Because what I will say is what I've seen, right, is injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so oftentimes it seems like other people will be impacted by these things, right? Not participating in democracy, a lack of responsiveness. But what we see is it will spread and grow. And so it goes from just these communities that I'm working in to now freedoms being taken away from many other people. And so if we want to have a democracy that is responsive to and reflective of all of the citizens in this country, we all have to be really holding leaders accountable to ensuring that all students are getting access to this information and that education, equity, like it shouldn't be dependent upon what your zip code is, what level of access to education and resources you're getting. And then with regard to the young people that I work with and people who always say over and over again that they want to engage young people, what I will say to you is that is exactly what we should be doing. We should be mentoring, we should be supporting, we should be encouraging, and we should be allowing young people to come to the table and actually have a voice at that table. Oftentimes people want to engage young people and they want them to come and then be talked at, right? Young people are not interested in that. And you're never going to see the best version of young people when you are engaging that way. And so I have seen young people be innovative, incredibly dedicated, passionate and determined about creating a world that is more equitable and equal, right? And really, allowing a space for everyone to thrive. But we have to get out of their way once we have provided them with the tools to be leaders, right? Then we have to just step out of their way and make space for them to actually lead because they will do amazing things. All of our programming is created by young people. And I'm saying 23, 21, they've given their whole summer dedicated to what our fall election cycle programming will be. So you would be amazed if you had the opportunity to really work with young people. But for you to have that privilege, you're going to have to encourage, right? And then you're going to have to actually listen to them and let them actually lead. So I think that's important for the work that I'm doing. But I think as a society as a whole, we have people that continue to not want to make room for young people. And that is where we will see, things start to look, I think to me, a way that we kind of all want it to look, right? And so make space for young people, y'all. They will impress you and inspire you. And when you feel sad, I get the privilege of working with young people. And so when it looks really bad on some days, I look at them and I say, we're going to be okay. We just got to make space for them to step in and take over their power. Um, and we'll be fine.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Angie, for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I found value in every word that you spoke because it's so important to empower young people to have a voice and to make their voice known. So, again, thank you for the work that you're doing. To my listeners, again, if you found value in today's conversation, I ask that you rate and review this episode where listen. It really does help other people hear about the impactful work that's being done to help us all together restore the fabric of our society. So, thank you. We'll see you next time on The Art of Volunteering.